We'll look at how to manage your finances. So it's very, very simple, really. Spend less than you make. That way you're always going to make sure that you've got some savings and money coming in to be able to help you with your next projects. So don't know if you guys might be able, doesn't matter if we can't think of more, but I've always suggested good ideas and tips is obviously to save and budget whilst we're self-employed, and some reasons why we should. Paying the bills is pretty important. You know, it's nice to know you can afford to live where you are. It's really useful for helping to work out if you need to increase or decrease your workload. I'm not sure exactly what everybody does, but assuming most of us are creatives or, you know, doing something art related or anything dance and things, you probably have a different project that you work on. So working out, you know, if you have a good lot of savings set aside, you can know that actually maybe you're able to decrease your workload. I think it's important to remember you don't need to always increase your work. Sometimes you need to make sure you're not overloading yourself. So, you know, it's really useful to know whether you need to get that balance right. Helps you find out where you're going to have dry patches of work or rich veins of work. So I will go into some of it all a bit more detail later, but obviously the more that we start to manage all of our finances and actually keeping track of them every month, especially once you've got full year's worth of finances written down, it can be really helpful for you to see times of the year when maybe it's quieter or busier for yourself. Obviously it will vary year on year, but it just helps you to plan ahead a bit better, manage your money. Obviously the biggest one that's always useful is obviously it gives you comfort during anything unexpected that comes up. Say your car breaks down, you know, you need to buy some new equipment that's very expensive. If you've got that saving and you've got a budget to hand, make sure that you can help afford all those extra things. So saving, what's it for? I know some of this is really basic, but a lot of budgeting and finance is really simple things, but it's just remembering to do the tasks and remembering the reasons why you're doing it to help encourage you to do it. So obviously it's really important having like some savings or a money buffer when you're self-employed, because obviously if you have any emergency, you're going to have a fund to help you for that when you're stuck. A recommendation from me and other self-employed people when I first started out was to try and keep 3 months of your average wage saved up for if you're self-employed. So you do that by working out however many months or years you've worked. You could do it over a year. If you've only just started, obviously it's hard to know straight away, but once you've got a few months in, if you just average out over those your monthly income, use that number and try and save aside over the year or a few years 3 months worth, and that usually gives you a nice buffer for just in case emergencies, you know, helping you if you've got a dry patch. Obviously it's really good, it helps you breaking out the paycheck cycle that many people have, so it will help you get a little bit ahead. You don't need to be always paying just as the bills are due, you know, it doesn't help you get ahead if you don't have this buffer. So if you manage to have that together, obviously it will reduce a lot of stress, which lets you have a little more time to focus on your projects. Also really help you with funding for your future, because it will give you more freedom in the long term. So I think with going freelance, really important to really try and think a longer term plan as well as a short term one, because you might find that you start in one area, maybe you end up changing into a different kind of project, or you maybe go a bit more niche depending on what it is you're doing. Or you might decide that you want to do something a bit bigger and better that's going to cost a bit more to get started. So having all this savings aside is going to really help for planning ahead for where you want to be. Which leads on to investing. So yeah, I really think it's a great idea to try and invest early in your own self and your own business. So developing yourself, which this was free, so this is great, but this is developing yourself, coming along to this masterclass today. Just looking at ways that you can develop your skills and your business is really, really helpful for helping you get going and really expand yourself. Obviously, one of the really important ones that, especially when we're younger, I did not start my pension until I was 25, and I still wish I'd started it earlier. I really highly recommend, no matter what age you are, try to set up your pension, especially if you're freelance, as early as you can, because you are not going to get all the help that you get from employers. Or obviously, quite often they will give you like half the amount that you save. We don't have that luxury if you're self-employed. So it's really worth looking into pension options and really, I know it sounds sometimes like forever away, but really thinking about what you do need to save for when you want to aim to retire. I know sometimes when you just finished uni and you think, I'm nowhere near retirement yet, but the earlier you start, the sooner you can finish. Investing also helps you up the game. As I said, you might find that, you know, say, for example, with me doing my curtain work, if I have my investing and savings set aside, I can go and buy these bigger, better machines that I need that have all these extra heads on them. So I could do, you know, some more intense sewing work. You know, it helps me open options for myself. There's probably similar options for yourself, depending on what your business is and what it is you're looking to do. And also, we're going to look at this later, to have a little bit of money aside can help you to create passive income, which is something especially useful at the minute during lockdown. We will be going on it at the end though, so I'll give you more details. So we're going to look at the super fun stuff. I'll make it as fun as I possibly can of the finances that we have to keep on top of. I am simplifying it to just these two things. I would say these really are the most important areas of finance that you should try and keep track of when you're self-employed, which is your income and expenditure, which is essentially the money coming in and the money coming out. Really simple. And your cash flow, which includes your balance at the end of every month. So it helps you keep your cash at a steady flow rather than having all these ebbs and dips. So I got some example here, and I'm going to break it down for you to make it a lot easier. So if I maybe just draw over, we'll just look at this one first. Oh, great drawing skills. So income and expenditure is not as horrible as you think. This one, we're going to start off with the budget area. So this is like an example of how you could set yours up. I have some links later for templates you can use as well. So we're starting off with the income in. The best way to, or my suggestion of it, it's very useful to break your income down. Obviously this example, they've got membership fees, sponsorship fees. Some of this you won't have, some of it you might, like merchandising perhaps, because it just helps you see where is the money coming in from. So, you know, that might be, for example, that you are on Etsy and then you have your own website. Maybe you also sell at market stalls and things like that, or straight from your studio. So you could have online sales, offline sales. You know, you could just have sales, whatever works for you, but trying to break it down into at least a few areas, 2 areas, is really helpful for just letting you know where is the income doing better and where could you work on it a little bit. It just helps you have a better idea of where your business is flourishing and where it maybe needs a bit more work. So always try to budget. So they've done a whole quarter on this example. I would usually do mine monthly. But it's entirely up to you with what works with your schedule and how little or large your figures are for what's going to be easier. So obviously with your income, you can't always put a budget down for what you'll earn. But once you get going, usually what I try to do for myself, if you've been trading or freelance for a year, you can try and just put through the figures from the previous month that year. So January 2020 and then 2021, you could put in the 2020 figure for 21. And that just kind of gives you an idea of what you had earned the last year, and then you can compare it to what you're doing this year. Or you could do it from the previous months, or perhaps some income you might kind of know ahead of time if you ever doing some kind of subscription based product or service offering, or perhaps you are doing art pieces and you're charging a deposit first and then the rest of the fee at the end. So sometimes you will have an idea of what your budget's going to be, but trying to kind of pull it from a previous month or some kind of figures helpful if you haven't got lots to work on. Then obviously we're going to work out your actual income, so just going through all your sales, work out where they're from, and then you can put it in, and then total up at the bottom. And you can see obviously on this example, they've actually done much better with their income than they expected. I actually don't do the variance, but some people really want to work out their figures. So it can be really helpful if it's something you want to do. So obviously they have done the difference with the actual monetary value and then the percentage. So you can add that on if you really wanted to kind of look in great detail at your finances. Then we start the next section with the expenditure. And again, it's really simple. We're going to be looking exactly the same format with your budget and then your actual figures. And this time breaking it down into different areas of expenditure. I'm going to go through those in detail with you after this. Working out the total, and then at the very bottom, we're going to minus them off each other to work out what is your actual income. So they did very well in this particular example. They earned a lot more than expected. But just having that income and expenditure every month or every quarter, every week, however much you want to do it, is just really good for you to know how much money you have coming in and out of your business. It might not always be super fun to do, but it's really, really useful for helping you plan out your workload. So this is quite long, but I'll try and go through it, you know, as at whatever pace works for you all. Now, all these expenses are what you can claim through HMRC. Obviously, I'm not actually an expert for HMRC, so if there are areas that you are unsure, because sometimes there are grey areas, it's always best to look on their website, where they do actually have a list of fully allowable expenses. So HMRC refer to anything that is an expense from your business to make sure you can do your job. They're called allowable expenses. And there is a lot more in there that maybe you're not aware, especially if you're starting out, that you can actually claim for. So office expenses are really important, because even if you're an artist or anything like that, or creative, you know, I may be doing circus all day, but I still need to come home and print out sheets of paper, get pens and paper for writing down, you know, some of my notes and planning for my work. You can claim all of that. Anything you need to post off, if it's work related, don't forget to claim the stamps. If you need a computer for your job, printers, software, especially, you know, if perhaps you are needing the Adobe suite or anything like that, you can make sure that you actually claim that against your income. Business premises can be included. So if you actually do rent a studio or workshop, perhaps you can claim for the rent, maintenance, repair, utilities, your insurance for the property, security if you have it. For me, that's not applicable, and I'm sure for some of you it's also not. So if you actually work from home, you can work out how much of your home is used for business. So first of all, if you work 25 hours or more a month, you can use what HMRC called simplified expenses, and I do have a link for this that I can give you at the break. And this basically is where HMRC have worked out a fixed amount of money that you can claim every month for working from home. So if you know that you're actually spending a lot of time working from home, sometimes that is a lot simpler. It doesn't have to be super complicated, or some people just choose to use that rather than working out because it is, like I say, a lot simpler. And when you're working from home, don't forget to include, you know, time used doing emails and calls and things like that. It's not just your actual creative work. But you can also work it out. Sometimes it does work out to your advantage to work out the proportion of your home. So how you work that out, again, it will be on the site, but you work out how many rooms you have in your household. You don't include your kitchen or bathrooms. And then you work out how many of those rooms do you use for your work. And then you need to work out how many hours a month that you actually work in that space. And you use that to work out, you have to work out obviously a total of all your utility bills, your phone, you know, anything that you use to pay your rent, your water, your electricity, work out that whole total. And then if you're using like a quarter of your home, it's a quarter of those bills, but over however many hours a month that you work. There are calculators to help you work that out, because sometimes it can be a little complicated depending on how many hours and how many rooms you have. Travel. So there are things you can and cannot claim for travel that sometimes people aren't always aware of. So you can include anything that's a business related car or van cost, including your insurance, fuel, repairs, breakdown cover, MOT. Now there are multiple ways to claim on travel. Some are more complex than others. So one option is to claim a percentage of your vehicle's costs by working out the percentage your car is used for business. So that's a little more working out there. But you can also, HMRC yet again, have a simplified vehicle expenses, where again, they work out a flat rate figure for you. You just fill out, they have questions that you just answer through, and then it will give you the result of the figure that you should put through. You can also put through anything that you travel by train, bus, plane, taxi. If you are working away from home, say you've got a project and you need to go out, sometimes when I'm hanging curtains, I'm going up to London for the night, you can claim on the hotel room and any meals that you have needed during that stay. So that means that basically, as I say on here, meetings and site visits and things are included. However, if you have a fixed home address and a fixed work office, you can't claim for commuting to and from that every day. So say you have a workshop or a studio and you are going between home and the studio, you wouldn't be able to claim that. You'd only be able to claim if you are going out to a customer or a client, or you're going out for, you know, some training course or something like that. So just make sure you bear that in mind. A lot of people sometimes think that you can claim that, but unfortunately you cannot. Then other ones we can do, as I said, there's quite a lot of things we can claim. Any stocks and materials. So these are called direct expenses. So basically any materials that you need to are directly used to create your work. So paint brushes, paint, pens, paper, anything like this, whatever the material, clay, or maybe it's using software online, you know, anything material wise that you need to keep purchasing, you can claim all of that. You might need at some point, you never know, any legal and financial costs. So if you do use an accountant, you can obviously claim that back. If for anything, you know, maybe you had a copyright issue, or you just needed a solicitor, surveyor, architect, depending on the kind of work you are doing, you claim all those fees. Your overdraft charges, credit card charges, interest from your loans, car hire, anything like that, basically. You can claim that all back. But as a note here, might not be applicable to everybody, but if you are using what's called cash basis accounting, which is probably what you will mostly be using, which basically means if you're earning under a certain amount, you only need to put through your income and outgoings, and you don't need to break it down in detail. It's a lot simpler that way. You can only claim up to £500 in interest and bank charges. The amount of interest we make at the moment, I'm sure that won't really be a problem, but you never know, you might have a nice little cash sum sat there, so make sure you don't go over the limit. Also business insurance, you know, some of you might need public liability, indemnity and things like that. You can claim that. Make sure for any of your expenses, keep your receipts. You don't have to have a physical one. I personally have always kept both, because you do need to keep 8 years worth of tax returns in case HMRC ever chose to check through them. So you need to make sure that you have 8 years worth accessible somewhere. But a lot of people these days, you know, take a photo of the receipt, upload it onto their computer. I would always suggest just make sure you have a copy of it twice. 2 copies is at least 2 copies. Because as I say, if you don't have that 8 years worth of tax returns, you can get in trouble. So even if you're keeping it all online, keep it on a hard drive, keep it on the cloud, keep a copy on your PC, print them out, anything like that. I was always good just to have a backup just in case. We're almost done on expenses. Kind of, I know it's long, but kind of nice because at least you've got lots that you can claim. Marketing, so anything that you use, Facebook ads, Instagram, like paid promotional posts, mail shots, samples that you give away, website costs, directory listings, anything like that you can claim. Now, clothing, again, there are certain rules on clothing. Anything that's a uniform, a protective clothing or costumes, if you are a dancer, actor, entertainer, anything like that, you can claim. But if you just have everyday clothing that you wear to work, you can't claim that through. So, you know, it might be that you have a certain branded t-shirt that you wear for work that's got your branding on. That's absolutely fine to claim. That's uniform. Or perhaps, yeah, if you're welding or you've got overalls for painting, they can all be claimed, but not your nice t-shirt and jeans. Staff costs, some of you might not obviously have these, but if you have staff, you can do all their salaries, their bonuses, pensions, benefits, agency fees if you're maybe taking agency workers, national insurance contributions for them. But also remember, even if maybe you're collaborating or at some point you may end up hiring another freelancer, obviously you can claim the costs of having to pay for them for their services as well. Subscriptions as well, so you might need to have a membership to trade bodies depending on what you're doing, professional memberships or journals that you have, accounting software, all of that can go through. So make sure you don't miss anything, because actually even the little tiny receipts add up over a year and makes quite a difference to your what you can claim. Income and expenditure tips. So I would really recommend tally it up as you go along. As I say, trust me on this one. When I first started doing my taxes, I waited until the 20th of January, I think. They are due by the 31st. And that is a stress you don't need right after Christmas. So really recommend, as much as you may one day think, I cannot be bothered with this. If you tally it up every week, every month, or daily, whatever works for you, it just makes it a lot easier when it comes to the end of the year and having to submit it. As I mentioned before, about make sure you save all your receipts and invoices, because you do need to have 8 years worth of expenses saved, of all your receipts and things for your tax return saved. And as I said about the budget part of the income and expenditure, really try and keep track of it if you can, as well as you possibly can, because it will help you to figure out, as I say, your cash flow with, are you doing well that month? Is it looking like a quiet month? This is especially where, for example, it can be quite useful to take, especially if you do commissions and things, commission-based work, to maybe look at taking up some deposit fee ahead of time, because it helps with your cash flow. You can know you're guaranteed this amount of money before and this amount of money after, especially if you're an artist, for example. For myself, doing curtains, if you're making an item, obviously you don't always have an exact time frame of when that will be finished, so it can be useful. Next up, we're looking at cash flow here, which is really similar actually. So incredibly similar what we're looking at here. This one's broken down into months. So when it's saying cash inflow, that is literally income. So as I said before, it's a good idea to maybe break it up into sections and tally up the total there. The cash outflow is literally your expenses. So again, this has been broken up in sections. You split it up and then put the tally at the top bottom, worked out your figure after you minus them. And the extra bit that we add in here is your opening balance. So they started at 0. This company must have obviously just started. And then the closing balance is how much you have at the end of the month. So then when we start on to the following month, so looking at February, we'd start with a figure that we had earned from the end of January and put that in for the beginning opening balance. And then at the end of February, the closing balance is the total cash flow plus your opening balance. And so obviously you can see if it's growing or minusing. So that will really help you to work out how your money is going if you do have kind of a big up or a big down. So we're going to look at an example on this one. This particular, let me just give you a little circle around it, for April here. Ooh, so bad. We're looking at just this month. Well, we can look at the other months, but see if you can have a look. They obviously, if you look at their net cash flow, they were in minus in April. Have you got any ideas of what they perhaps could have done from looking at this to help keep them in the plus rather than the negative? Any ideas? There's more than one answer to this. Give me a minute. So I'll go ahead with an example for it, which is, first off, what they could have done is tried to up their cash inflow. So obviously not always that easy, but perhaps they could have tried to boost some sales with a bit more promotion and advertising. It might have got their sales up high enough that their cash flow stayed a bit more steady. They could have looked at cutting down on, so they got here Sophie and Jack's salaries. Maybe they could have cut their workload. Obviously they're salaried, but say they were, I don't know, a 0-hour contract, for example, or a freelancer. You could have said, okay, we're going to do a couple of hours less this week. I feel like looking at this, probably the best example here for this company would have probably been, if you look through January, they have purchased some equipment that's cost them £2,500. Then they've gone 2 months without, and then in April they've done the same purchase. So if you were to look at this, say it was your own cash flow and you were purchasing equipment regularly every 3 months in this example, this is an outgoing that they are aware of ahead of time. It may not be, but we'll assume in this example that it is. So because they knew that that cost was coming up, they could have tried to make their cash flow better, a bit more steady, by trying to maybe set aside some money for the equipment the 2 previous months. They could have offset it by perhaps lowering their marketing costs for a couple of months. there's a lot of options, but this is why having this cash flow is really useful for you to look at your business. Because if your income, I mean, sometimes we're going to have a negative that month. Sometimes it's not possible to avoid. You know, you might have some very expensive equipment breakdown and you need to purchase a new one. You might have a very expensive travel cost. Sometimes things are going to come up and you can't change it, and that it's just going to be a minus. But for example, if you keep looking at this monthly, sometimes, for example, like this equipment example, you might find that there are certain costs that you are having fairly regularly, and you can start to plan out how much they're going to cost. Because having a steady cash flow is really useful for you to just, as I say, it helps with planning, and it helps you to know how much money you have sat there. So obviously, just so it makes sense to you, the company, even though they had a net cash flow of minus £1,500, they did actually still make a profit. So, oh, sorry that. Their closing balance was still £3,250. So they still have money sat in their bank account. Imagine the opening and closing balance is your bank account. So say you had £100 in it, then you made £800 of income. Your bank account now has £900 of income. Say some of it was, minus off your outflow costs. So they did still have the money in their bank, but obviously, as I mentioned before, this is to try and help you to save up that money buffer. So having a steady cash flow is going to help you to keep that buffer of money and keep it building and building and building every month. And things like this, you know, having that is especially helpful for dry periods. Like for many of us, it might be this current situation. Obviously, this has lasted longer than 3 months, but having a look at these costs, it can help you to kind of get that business going, money going back up before it really drops down, because you are aware every month of what's going on there. So that's why they are quite useful to have. So a couple last tips on cash flow. So make sure, even if you're filling it out, you know, weekly or whatever, make sure you check it monthly, at least monthly, to see if you're making a profit or not. Maybe you need to do a bit more that month. As I mentioned before, it's great to use it to make changes before you start going into like a negative spiral. It can just get you out of that dip before it becomes a big pit. Use previous years, as I said, really useful to reflect on previous quarters, previous years, and previous months, to help you identify when you're having a quiet or busy period. For me, for example, with the circus, our summertime is our prime time. So summer, we're always incredibly busy. Usually we turn work down, and then annoyingly, then in the winter, we're incredibly quiet and usually don't have enough work. I would imagine that it is quite common for most freelancers to have periods when there's too much work and then periods when there's not enough. So knowing that ahead of time just helps you know how much work to take on during those periods, to make sure that, you know, maybe during the summer, knowing that winter's quieter, you might want to take on a little bit more work, but you don't want to overload yourself to burning out. It just helps you plan out the whole year and make sure that you have money for every month. So that's what's useful about having all these finances in place. So a little bit on managing our taxes. In income and expenditure monthly, at least, as I said. A great suggestion that I was given and I now use is, if you're able to, just pop 20% of your earnings aside in a savings account every month. I actually just put 20% away of every single invoice that I receive money from. So I do it per job. I just put it away before I can even spend it. So I find it a lot easier, because then it's kind of like when you used to get, if you were employed, having your salary come in with the tax already took off. If I get my money come in and I just hide it away and don't even get a chance to look at it. And you're a lot more likely to be able to carry on saving it than just having it in the same account. It can be a lot more difficult to know what money's spending money and what money's not. So really useful to have a separate account to just put tax away and have it hidden away. So other suggestions for that is sometimes people might even use an ISA or restricted savings account where you can only withdraw once or twice a year. If you really struggle with saving it, that will force you to not be able to withdraw from it. If anyone has a mortgage, a lot of people actually do it with overpayments to their mortgage because it's got a benefit during the time that it stays in there. You get less interest. So you can look it up. There's actually a lot of ways that you can set that money aside for the year and actually make some profit out of it. Like with the mortgage payments, it's quite a good one actually. Or just having it in a high interest savings, then, you know, whilst it's there for the year, you can at least make a little bit of income out of it. And then you've got it all ready for the end of the year when your tax is due. And very often you end up having more than you actually owe. So you can either keep that money for spending on Christmas if you really wish. You know, you could invest that money back into yourself or your equipment, or you could just save it and carry it on for the next year's taxes. It gives you more options, it gives you more freedom. And final tip, just don't put your head in the sand when it comes to HMRC. I know people that have had problems with not being able to pay on time, especially an issue for a lot of people at the minute. And HMRC actually could be very, very good to deal with if you were just open and honest with them. So if you are struggling, especially at the moment, I'm sure some of you are probably aware that there are actually, you are allowed to delay your payments at the moment and spread them out rather than having to pay the big chunk up front. So if you are having problems, especially during this circumstance, it's definitely better to inform HMRC ahead of time before you are struggling, because they are really, really good at trying to help you find a way to make it work. So don't stick your head in the sand. There are obviously three big main options for looking after your taxes, which is obviously in order of how much it's going to cost you. You can use an accountant. You know, maybe you finish this and think, oh, I do not want to sit and do this every week. No way. Hey, it's fine. You don't have to. You can get an accountant to help you out. I have always strongly suggested using another sole trader because we're all freelancers here. We're all self-employed. And I just think it's really nice if you're able to help support each other. So help the small people out. Help small people by helping each other. Another option is there is bookkeeping software. So this is something that I use. I am a lover of Xero bookkeeping. It's very good it's very visual. So there are lots of different styles, and you might find that some bookkeeping software works better for you than others. So just be aware they're all quite different. They're not all the same format. If there's one that you don't like, there may be another that works for you. But Xero's is very, very user friendly. It's laid out very simply. It's easy to find information, but there are other options such as Sage, QuickBooks. If you look it up, there are quite a lot of options, but they're some of the bigger names. And there are links that I think will pop in on the break for all of those. And obviously you can do it yourself, as I've shown you, and that's free. That costs you nothing. Or you can charge yourself if you want, because obviously it does take a little more grind to get it going. Once you've got your spreadsheet set up and going, it's very easy to carry it on month by month. It's just getting a routine in place. So yeah, HMRC actually have a lot of tools available for medium and small businesses, and especially for creative industry. There's some quite useful things out there. Again, I'll pop these, I think Harriet will pop the links in on our next break, which is very soon. There's a whole thing of e-learning that they have for helping you starting in business. So if you haven't started yet, well, sometimes it's good to just refresh. It goes over a lot of tips. You can also sign up to HMRC webinars, where they go in full detail in like the topics that we have just brushed on, such as business expenses. They have one that actually covers in depth everything, and it's a HMRC advisor. So you can actually ask them queries if you were stuck, you know, they'll be able to actually answer from HMRC themselves. They have one on VAT, one on allowances. They are very useful if you're not really 100% certain on any of the topics. And then they also have, it's called a Ready Reckoner, which helps you to estimate how much tax you're going to need to pay on what you've earned. So that can be quite useful if you're working out your taxes ahead of time and maybe you don't want to submit them yet. You can just know ahead before January what you're going to owe. So it helps you to work out how much you're going to need to save up. So next section, I'm going to try and kind of focus on managing your admin. There's a load of links I'm leaving you at the end on some of the HMRC stuff again, but a lot of it is just links on where to sign up and things. Some tips on managing our time. And I will tell you now, I'm a terrible procrastinator. I'm just as bad as everybody else. But just trying to put some of this stuff in place will really help the workload and everything flow better. Setting aside times specifically for admin and work. Now, might not necessarily be how you expect this, but I would suggest, obviously, if you're in a creative industry, your creativity is the most important aspect of your work. If you don't have that, you know, say if you're a painter and you're trying to do an art piece when your brain is just you're not in that headspace, you're not going to achieve the best work that you maybe could. So actually, I suggest in creative industry that we prioritize that time as the most important. So find a rhythm of how you work. You know yourself. Are you an early bird? Do you work best at night? Do you have midday slump and you can't do anything for 2 hours till you have a nap? You know, this is the benefit of us being freelance and self-employed. We don't have to work 9 to 5. We can choose the hours that suit us. As I said in the previous slide, make sure it's balanced. We're not aiming to do 21 hours of work here. You know, try and give yourself an 8-hour day or whatever's balanced for you. But the plus of our job of being freelance is we can pick and choose. You know, you might just work morning and then late at night and nothing in the middle. You might find that you do it all from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. and you're done. You know, you might do the bulk. You might find 9 to 5s actually you really like it. But you don't need to stick with what is socially acceptable. It's what works for you. And say your creative time is in the morning and that's when you get the bulk of your creative work done. Prioritize that time for that. And then the times when you would be sat on Instagram or Pinterest, liking all your, you know, pinning your boards or watching cat videos on YouTube, that is the time when you need to be doing your admin. Because it's time you're just wasting. And admin, once you get in the rhythm of it, it's just little and often. And instead of a cat video, do 5 minutes of filling out your expenses, and you've done it before you think. Write out your to-do list whilst you would sat in bed playing on Pokemon Go. I definitely don't do that. You know, make it work for you. It's just trying to remember that actually it's your time now, not anybody else's. Reminders for things. I am terrible. I remember nothing if I don't write it down. Make sure you put them out wherever you want. I am a massive fan of big, bright post-it notes that I stick in really annoying places, like on the fridge, on the door, in the bathroom, like in the mirror. So I have to look at it and then I'm like, oh, I've got to do this today. Or put it on your phone. Maybe you just don't want to waste paper, or, you know, you don't use that anymore. So put a phone reminder with a hideous sound, anything you need to do to make sure that you're going to remember and have this reminder visually there, you know. Making lists, I'm going to actually expand on that a little bit to make our lists really, really productive. But writing a to-do list really helps prioritizing tasks. And as I say, helps you remember pen usage. Some of us just get stuck working on a computer all day, and it's always nice to have a little rest from that. Plus the benefit is crossing them off is like a visual reminder that you've completed that task. I have a very cheesy thing I always do on mine, which is the first to do on my list is write a list, so that at the end I can always cross it. And there's something really satisfying about having one thing crossed off. When I was talking to my mum about this, she's also freelance, she told me she actually puts "I'm awesome" and ticks that off every day because she's like, yeah, I'm awesome. So put what you like, put something you know you can tick off, even if it's a task you've just done, write it on and cross it, and it's just super satisfying. And then obviously the one that is the most difficult is just try to stop procrastinating. More you procrastinate, the more the task just becomes bigger and more dreadful, and you know, you make it bigger than it is in your head. So just trying to start anything in any order, just even 5 minutes, will just make it easier. It breaks it up, woohoo, and breaks the procrastination tornado. So a tip that I have for this is to set a 5-minute task. If there's something really big that you need to start on and you're like, I don't even know where to begin, and sometimes you get a bit overwhelmed with something or a project, tell yourself you have to do just 5 minutes, nothing else. And after 5 minutes, you can reassess and you can say, I've done 5 minutes, that's it, I'm not doing any more. But very often, once you've done 5 minutes, more often than not, you'll find actually you've started, and then you think, well, I might as well do 10 more minutes or finish it, or 5 more minutes. Before you know it, you've actually kind of started your task, and then it's just not as daunting. So if you're really struggling, the 5-minute rule is a really good one. So this is the one time we need our pen and paper. This is going to help us with getting better at making our to-do lists. So if you have a moment now, if you can't write it down, have it in your head. Try and get about 10 tasks, 5 to 10 things that you have as not a to-do list right now. And it doesn't matter what order they're in at the moment, just whatever comes out, just pop it down. So what we're going to look at now, this is how best way of trying to prioritize your tasks. So we have 4 sections. We have important and urgent, important and not urgent, not important and urgent, and not important and not urgent. Now, if you go through your list, this will help you to actually prioritize your workload. It seems really simple, but it's quite helpful. So only you are going to know where that task sits. And quite often we'll find that there is at least one task in there that is not important to you and not urgent for you. And if you have any of those, this is where you kind of need to look at, do you even need to do this task? Because what happens quite often is we end up taking on other people's tasks, which makes us feel like we have loads to do, and when actually there's not that much that we need to do for ourselves. So it's good to have a look and just check, you know, there might be something in there that you think, oh, this isn't even important, why am I doing it? The aim of this is that ideally the perfect person will never have more than one thing important and urgent, because the idea is that we prioritize the tasks and we do them before they get to the urgent stage. Yeah, perfect. But hopefully that kind of helps you. It's a really great way, it's a technique that I got taught of how to really like manage workloads, and that to-do lists don't have to just be a big list. It really helps you work out, if you're not, sometimes they're not always obvious where they should be in what order. That really help you to figure it out, and as I say, work out what shouldn't even be on your list. Now, again, another tip for you guys, especially as you are clearly procrastinators, is how to use it to your advantage. These are some things that I know a lot of my creative friends do, and this is their way of procrastinating. So I've been trying to find ways of how we can actually make it an advantage to help you admin and manage your time. So I don't know if anyone does bullet journal here, but there are obviously some images here. Bullet journaling is a way of helping you with, you could do anything in a bullet journal, but they're very useful to be used for work. You can set up, write out routines. You can put this example here with work hours, especially if you're doing a job where you have to keep a tally of the workload that you're doing. It'll really help you to write down each day, just cross off the hours that you're doing, have a routine with the time of the day so you can work out your time schedule. You can do all your to-do lists in there, and it just puts it all in one place, all together, where you can find everything. I started using one a year and a half ago, and I actually would recommend giving it a go if you think it's something you can keep on top of. I even do my expenses in there. I have an expenses chart in there where I put it in there, and then I write it up on my bookkeeping software later. And I have like a slot where I put all my receipts in there. And the idea of them is they're creative. So it's not as boring as just looking at a spreadsheet or looking at paperwork. You can write it out and decorate it, make it as fun or as plain as you want. They're quite useful. Also, Pinterest actually can be really useful, especially in the creative industry. Definitely, I think they're best for collaborative projects, because obviously if you're getting inspirational ideas or planning things, you can collaborate on a board. You can even set dates on a board and things like that, and use it when we're obviously stuck online. You don't necessarily need to be face-to-face to share ideas on there. Good old pen and paper, as I said, can't beat writing a list. Mind mapping, again, is really, really useful. Sometimes we might be doodling away. Use that as start mind mapping to work out your plan for the day. Maybe for some of your projects, you might start mind mapping the projects. You know, there's lots of uses for them. And doodling, just to cheer you up on the page, you know, say you are reading something difficult, highlight through it, add some little pictures, make your task load image based. It doesn't have to be text based. You know, the things that you sit and do when you're bored, try and implement them into your admin to make it a bit more enjoyable, and not always as dull. You can make it as fun as you want. So I put a few tips as well for working through lockdowns, because obviously we've had 2 now. We may end up with more next year. We're not sure what the future's going to look like. And it can be hard being a creative industry, being able to carry on getting some of our work done. So as I said before, Pinterest is really great for collaborating with people. Google Docs, if people don't use that already, again, you can share it with other people. So say you are working on a project with other people, or you know, you have other staff members or anything like that, you can share spreadsheets, documents, presentations, and you can annotate on the side of them, leave notes, you can directly edit them. There's a lot of uses. Now is a really good time that maybe if you work with businesses farther afield, to look local and collaborate locally for work. And sometimes you might find there's things on your doorstep that you weren't aware of. This is something I've been doing a lot with my curtain business. Usually we go quite far afield. So during lockdown, we've been trying to limit to, especially when they had the tiered areas, ones in lower tiers, which was our local area. So we started trying to promote more locally, which actually we never really went locally, but it was quite a benefit. Looking at discounts for whilst you're working online, maybe you are someone who needs to work face to face, or you normally do physical pieces or physical projects, maybe there is a way that you can offer them online. And obviously there's usually a lower cost to offering something online, which means that maybe you could pass that discount on, be that via email to selected people that you want to continue working with, or offering discounts just on your social media, or, you know, as an example for Top Banana, we took some of our physical classes online, and there's a lower cost for us to run them online. So we have actually got our classes that are cheaper online than if you were to do them physically. Use the time. Perhaps there is not a possible way for you to work at the moment. Sometimes there's just not an opportunity for you to do that. So you can use that time to really finesse your finances, get that tax return done a year early. You know, use it to make out your plans, contingency plans. Something that's maybe something you want to look into is resilience and diversification of your business, especially if you're already around and running. If you're not, it's still, I would recommend something you should really put in place. There's actually a project called the Small Business Leadership Program, which is by the Small Business Charter, who are actually offering free courses in resilience, planning and productivity. So if that's like a kind of business area that you want to learn more about, there are actually things out there that are free to small businesses and sole traders at the moment during lockdown, that are run through local universities and things. So it's really worth looking at what's available. Also, Aspects actually have, along with this masterclass, other ones covering different topics. So you can learn a lot about helping you plan out and make documents up for your business. And then one of the really important ones is just trying to work, if possible, ahead of your schedule. So, you know, as an example, perhaps if you're a graphics designer and you're making a poster every month for a shop or a company, and you always know you're doing it the same date every month, maybe you have a project that's ongoing, trying to just get 1, 2, 3 months ahead of yourself, or a couple of pieces of work ahead, in case you are finding you're having to be off sick, or you're having to self-isolate, or, you know, try and find ways that you can at least get some of your work ahead of time, so that if you do have to stop working, you can still try and have a little bit of income ahead of time. Again, it might not always be possible for everyone, but really have a think, and there may be a way that you can implement that. So the last bit I'm going to do is a little tiny bit more in depth, which is ways to help us grow and maintain our income, which is obviously incredibly useful now during lockdown, as lots of businesses have been affected, some positively, some negatively, but this is some tips. So a lot of people do actually, when they start off going self-employed, do it alongside something else. Starting out, obviously, it can be really useful to supplement your income with a part-time job, or something else alongside it. You know, it can be really useful when situation changes. Sometimes it's something that you might just find you should consider, having some side avenue along with what you're doing. Something useful for helping you grow your business, more applicable for products and services, maybe if you're an artist and you have artwork that you're selling, is finding a price for the product that you are giving, making, creating, that you're happy to accept for the job, is one thing, but also it's really important to see what are people actually willing to spend as well, because it's all good if you, for example, create this fantastic piece of art and you think, okay, I'm going to sell this for £2,000. That's what it's worth. If every other customer that you have thinks, I'm not paying that for it, you're never going to sell it. So you're never going to grow that business, or maybe it'll take you a year to sell it. You need to sometimes find the middle ground between things. So there's what you're happy with, there's what the customer's happy with, and finding this middle ground of what works. Making sure you've covered your costs, of course, but sometimes you need to compromise on things, and compromising is, you know, a real good way of helping grow the business and keep that cash flowing. Networking. So I think networking is one of the most important things to grow your business, and one of the most important things, full stop, when you're self-employed, because your network is not only, you know, your friend, your colleague, people in your industry, they are also your audience. They can be your next client, your next customer. Like, from your network, the more you grow this network, the more your business can grow. You can find, for my curtain company, I actually work with some other people on this, and one of the women who also makes curtains with me, she has been doing it for, I think, 30 years, entirely word of mouth, just through networking. She never had a website. She's never done leaflets, never ever done advertising or marketing. And she has had a steady income of work for 30 years. So that's where networking can be amazing at helping your business grow. I mean, just think if she had also advertised and also had a website, how much more she could have grown from that. So that's why I think a network is super duper important. And then also gathering audiences. You don't need to wait until you've finished a project before you start seeking an audience out. People love behind the scenes. You know, they love to know what's happening, what if you've got in progress. You're trying to gather them before your project or your piece, whatever it is you're doing. Try and get that audience before you finish, because then you're gaining interest before you're even selling this product. Which again, it leads to marketing. Essentially, it's learning how to market yourself, or your product or service, learning how to brand and how to gain interest in your own business. There are lots of marketing seminars and things I see sometimes available, so really worth looking at, learning how to market yourself. Okay, so the last part we're going to look at today is passive income, which I said I would come back to. So this is like something I've added in that because I thought it's actually something really useful to look at in this kind of industry, because what you're creating is your own kind of individual product or service, which can be used to make passive income. So I'm going to look at the different 4 types that we have, and they're actually a lot simpler than they sound, but this is ways that we can make income. So passive income is basically, as an example, say you have made a video on how to make, I don't know, an item. So you've like, you know how to make a glass, and you've done a video on how to make a glass, or like a clay bowl or something. You have that on a website, and you say, right, I'm leaving it on there, and everyone that wants to watch it pays £1, £5, whatever it is. That's basically passive income. You're earning money from a product that you've made, and you don't need to do anything else with it. It can just sit there and earn money for you. You don't need to input anything to get that income. So this is something that's really, really good to start looking at early on if you haven't started already. Finding ways to make passive income, because this really helps for growth and saving up money for your business. You're basically trying to find different ways of how to make money passively. So it's sat on very commonly on the internet, ticking away, making money whilst you're sat in bed. It's the perfect way to earn. I'm asleep and someone in America is buying my video on how to make a bowl. This is great. I'll go through. So there are different ones. So the 4 groups that they're kind of broke into is, one is buying cash flow assets. Sounds more complex than it is. Some of these do sound expensive, but I will try and explain. So dividends, are something that some of you may even already do, where if you are into stocks and shares and things like that, which is just where you are purchasing some into a business and you're getting a payout every month. You do nothing. You put the money in and money just comes out regularly, which just lets your money grow. You can put that money back into the dividend to grow it up, or you can just get the money to come directly to you. You don't need to have a large sum of money to start a dividend either. So things like that can be really useful to look at. Real estate, some of you, it might not be something that's possible, but you know, things like buying out your workshop and being able to have that as a purchase, having that sat there is going to earn, you know, it's going to grow in interest. So over time, your value of that real estate will be more. It might be that it's a garage, but it's still going to earn you money over long term. Business lending, again, this can be small or large. Some of you may have even had someone lend you money, like business angels and things like that, where another business can loan you money and you pay them back with interest. Well, there's no reason you can't do that yourself. If you have a little bit of spare money set aside, and you are not needing it for a period of time, help another business start up or another sole trader, you know, loan them it with interest. These are all cash flow assets. There are more ways you can do it. If you sit and think about it, or look up ideas, it's whatever you can think of to try and make that work. Another one is building cash flow assets. So this is where you are kind of creating your own product to sell. Like I said about the bowl video, that's an example of building cash flow. So websites and social media, this is a really common one, where, for example, people who are like big personalities on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you know, how they maybe are going to promote a product or a service, they get paid for that. Now that they've built their cash flow asset by creating an audience large enough for them to be offered the advertising. So for the example of the website, perhaps you have a website and you grow that website to have a large audience. If it's large enough, you can sell advertising slots on your website. So people want to be on your page because they know that it gets them attention. So they pay you for it. So you're building up, basically your marketing and branding is building up this cash flow asset. Affiliate marketing is another option. So for people who aren't sure what that is, say you have a website and your other artist friend has a website and you are trying to get them to buy products on each other's. So I say to my friend, hey, I will link to your shop products, and every time someone goes from my website to yours, I'll take 10% off of that and you can have the rest of the money. That's affiliate marketing. So you take a little slice out of the money that they make because you sent them there, and vice versa. It's also really useful affiliate marketing for your own business to grow. So you might decide, actually, I want to pay this big company to affiliate me because I want to grow my business. But when it comes to passive income, it's the other way around. Selling your own resources. So this is like selling tutorials online, videos. It might be that you create a pack, a resource pack. Perhaps you aren't able to work at the moment. Thinking of Dan's example, you're in theatre, perhaps you have a lot of knowledge in there that you could create a resource that you could sell online. Same, Hannah, you might have something creative that you can make and have a seminar that people pay to come to, and you teach them that on the seminar. These are all cash flow assets. There's a lot of options for this. I've even seen things like, for example, I moved house recently and people were selling packing lists, and like I could pay a couple of pounds to have someone send me a packing resource list where I print out their sheets, and they had checklists pre-made, they had stickers pre-made. You know, it's even that simple, tiny little things. And they might only be selling them £1 a piece, but if 100 people buy that, that's £100. You know, so it doesn't matter if they cost a lot or a little, it's still just gaining passive income. Sharing or selling assets. So you might find you have items that you just own and you don't use them. There's no reason you can't sell that. You probably do it on your at home on eBay. Maybe you use Facebook selling pages. There's no reason you can't look at doing the exact same thing in your business. So look at items that you have, and perhaps you purchased it for a project and then you've never used it, or you know, it's not something you offer anymore. There's no reason you couldn't look at selling that to another company, another person. The same with your space and your equipment. You might have something quite specialist, depending on what you do, that you could loan to other people. So I have an industrial sewing machine, and I assume, you know, an everyday person might not have one. Perhaps they have a project where they need one. I could hire that out to them, or loan it to another company. Say I'm creating curtains, there's another curtain maker and their sewing machine's broken and they have to wait a week to fix it. Perhaps I have a spare one I could loan them, and I'm making that an asset because I'm sharing it. Same with your space. You might have a workshop or studio and you can hire out that space. The last part sounds a lot more complicated than it is, which is reverse passive income. It's basically where you cut your monthly expenses to save money, and that becomes a source of income. So for example, you have all your expenses, and one of them is something you're like, oh, hey, I can cut this out, or I can cut it down. So like your rent, and you manage to negotiate a cheaper rent. That becomes a reverse passive income. So you save that money and that becomes an income. So it comes back. You're going from expense and you're switching it over to money coming in rather than out. It's just looking at it a different way, basically. So that's another really easy one. It's called passive income, reverse passive income, but it's basically just finding ways to budget. It's the same thing. So find everything that you do. How can I save money to make it positive rather than minus? You can do that with every single part of your business, basically. Just look through everything and see, how can I cut the cost? How can I change it to get rid of it, basically? That kind of sums up what that one is. Very, very simple.